What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And free agency, guys, it is right around the corner, and we've had a lot of discussions about the upcoming draft. We've had a lot of discussions about the players that the Giants could sign at the top of the market, but who are some of those guys that might be a little bit underrated as free agents this upcoming offseason? Guys in that second to third tier of free agents that the Giants could consider targeting this offseason. That's what we want to discuss in today's episode. Take a look at some of those guys that are more realistic for the Giants. Guys that they could afford to sign without breaking the bank in order to acquire them. Who are those specific players? Well, we've identified three of them, and we're going to go ahead and break them all down in today's episode. But before we do, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And who is that first underrated free agent that you think makes sense for the New York Giants?
I'm doing pretty good, man. And listen, there's going to be a lot of needs for the Giants. Obviously, they have the draft and free agency. We have about $32 million this year, but next year, 2026, we have like over $100 million. Depending on what they do this year, that could come down, obviously. And assuming we don't go and acquire a contract like that of Derek Carr's or Matthew Stafford's, there are some varying things that could occur that will impact the future. But I think the Giants are going to land somewhere in the middle of being like, we're not going to bargain bin shop, but we're also not going to go for the Trey Smiths of the world and the T. Higgins of the world. I think they're going to try to find a middle ground where they find some good, competent, experienced players that aren't going to break the bank. So, with that being said, I talked about this guy a couple weeks ago, and I still think he is a perfect player for the Giants. This is kind of my Jermaine Illuminor of this offseason, Anthony. And his name is Patrick Mekari. If you guys remember the couple episodes ago, I did discuss him, and I'm going to discuss him one more time because I think he's a really good fit for the Giants. Free agent, and he's coming from a very, very good Baltimore Ravens team. And he's a former UDFA from 2019, was a California Golden Bear. He's 27 years old. He's 6'4", 305. He looks like he could be a bouncer at a nightclub. That's the type of guy I want manning a guard position for us. And this past season, he gave up 32 pressures and 1 sack. All of his reps basically coming at left guard. 955. He did have 169 at right tackle. But guys, let me just keep in mind for a second, he played the first 3 games of the season at right tackle, and he gave up 8 pressures in that span. The rest of the season, it wasn't so bad. He had 1 really bad game against Philadelphia. But aside from that, he was pretty consistent and pretty good the whole rest of the way. The last 5 games of the season, or 6 games really, he was really, really, really good. Like I said, 1 sack the whole year. Not bad. He's a very solid left guard. Historically, he's played everywhere. 685 snaps at left tackle, 965 at left guard, 918 at center, 272 at right guard, 1210 at right tackle. So, if something happens to Illuminor, he can kick out to right tackle. If something happens to John Runyon, he can play left guard. He can also compete to start at right guard immediately, where he does have a lot of experience as well. I would say a lot. He has some experience. So you could always move John Runyon back over to the right side and put Mekari at left guard if you wanted to go in that direction. But what I'm really going at here with Mekari is he's not going to break the bank. We're talking about a player that might get $8 million per season, and he can play everywhere. So if something happens to Andrew Thomas, if something happens to Illuminor, if something happens to JMS, if something happens to, John Runyon, he can step in and play at a competent level at all these spots. I'm looking for insurance policies. I'd also draft a guy like Jonas Avenaya out of, was it Arizona? I forget what school. I think it was Arizona. I'd also draft him in the second round to be your start, plug and play right guard, and Mekari can be your utility man across the board. I wouldn't even hate that kind of move. I know he'll probably start somewhere, but maybe you have Jonah not start immediately. Like, good teams draft players not to always start on day one. Maybe you draft Jonah, have him be a nice versatile piece. He's played right tackle, he's played right guard, and then you have a position battle there between the two. And then the worst case, one of them ends up becoming a really solid, competent depth option. And with a rookie quarterback, that's a damn good situation to find yourself in, with good starting talent and depth pieces. So Patrick Mekari, he's not going to break the bank. He's a middle option, like a mid-tier kind of guy, but he's got a ton of value across the board. That's the type of player I'm looking for in free agency.
Yeah, I think Patrick Mekari makes a lot of sense for all the reasons that you just mentioned, but the one that I'll focus on is that versatility. For me, this is a player that the Giants could sign to play anywhere they need him to. They're not signing him as a right tackle. They're not signing him as a right guard, nor as a left guard, nor as a center, nor as a left tackle. They are just signing him to be an offensive lineman. Wherever they need him to play, he goes out there and they play. Realistically, they're not going to be able to upgrade the 4 positions on the offensive line that could probably use upgrade. Well, maybe not 4, but you get the point. They just need a guy who could step in, whether that's due to injuries, struggles. I mean, think about how many injuries, Alex, the New York Giants had to deal with on the offensive line this past season. Andrew Thomas went down. John Runyon went down. Illuminor was out for some games. Evan Neal was out. John Michael Schmitz was out for some games. Greg Van Roten was the only one that stayed fully healthy throughout all 17 games, and he's really a backup level player. So all of the injuries that the New York Giants had on the offensive line, they wish that they had a player like Patrick Mekari who is durable, stays healthy, and can give you 1,000 snaps across 4 different positions in a single season. So that's the kind of player that the New York Giants really do need. I think they really wanted Josh Azidu to be that guy for them who could plug in anywhere, play left guard, play left tackle. Okay, now move to the right side. It didn't work out because Josh Azidu, well, let's face it, just isn't a good enough player to do that. But Patrick Mekari has proven it across, several years starting in the NFL. He's done it with a really good team in the Baltimore Ravens now. Let's see if we could pry him over to New York and make him that, like you said, utility piece, fill in wherever the New York Giants need him to on the offensive line. I think he would be a great signing. I don't think he would be all that expensive because he is viewed mostly as a backup and just kind of bridge the gap player. So for that reason, I think he'll be affordable. And for the New York Giants, who just desperately need some depth on the offensive line, this guy technically gives you depth at more than one position, making him the perfect signing for the New York Giants on the cheaper end of the market. Now, moving over to the other underrated player that I see for the New York Giants, Alex, in free agency, I like Rasul Douglas. Former Buffalo Bills player, well, actually current Buffalo Bills player, former Green Bay Packers player, also all the way back in 2017. You might remember him with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's where Giants fans should be more familiar with him. He didn't play well in 2024. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He kind of sucked. He didn't get his hands on many balls, and he let up a lot of receptions and a lot of yardage. However, the season prior, he had 5 interceptions and 9 pass breakups. I think what went wrong in 2024, I think there were some schematic changes to the Buffalo Bills defense that really hindered his ability to perform. He looks like one of those players who needs a change of scenery and is a perfect bounce back candidate. And again, if we're talking about underrated, cheaper options, I think Rasul Douglas has a veteran option for the New York Giants in their secondary. We've said how many times, Alex, that they need a veteran option, desperately need somebody with some experience to get into the lineup. And maybe it's not a DJ Reed or Travarius Ward at the top of the market. Maybe it is a guy like Rasul Douglas who is not necessarily elite, but is good enough to start 17 games for you. Douglas can do that. And the reason why I think he makes a lot of sense for the New York Giants is connections. The New York Giants, of course, have these 2 guys running the show with Joe Shane and Brian Dable, who are from the Buffalo Bills tree, Rasul Douglas being from Buffalo as well. I think that connection could be interesting. I don't know if there was any overlap between the two. I don't think that there was. However, we know that even if Dable and Shane weren't there when a player from the Bills got acquired, they still have good tabs on what's going on in the Bills front office, and they're able to get some insider info and learn about where a player's at. So if they hear from their Bills friends that Rasul Douglas still has it, but they just can't afford to sign him, I think that he makes sense for the Giants as a veteran option who can bring some experience to the lineup. Alex, what are your thoughts on Rasul Douglas, or if there's any other veteran cornerbacks that you think make more sense for the New York Giants? Again, Douglas wasn't great this past season, but if you look at his whole body of work, he's been a consistent performer. Some ebbs and flows throughout his career, but I think that he would be a stable veteran presence that could benefit the New York Giants.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know what? I'll tell you one thing, Anthony. When it comes to the Giants and Joe Shane and Brian Dable, you want to know, you know what they love the most? Taking former Bills players and putting them on the Giants. That is literally their bread and butter. Devin Singletary is a good example of that. This is Isaiah Hodgins was another one. Of course, he didn't play much this past season, but is what it is. Now, Douglas, he's a veteran, 29 years old. He has a ton of experience. Is he a good player? You could argue he's inconsistent. He fell off a cliff this past year with Buffalo, but in 2023, he was really good in coverage. But at 1,040 snaps, only give up only 535 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions though, and 9 pass breakups. He was solid. Now the problem is, I feel as though the Giants need like a CB1. I think they need someone to like kind of take the CB1 job from Deontay Banks, or at least push him for it. I don't think that Douglas is going to push him for that, but I think he does fill a CB2 role at a very cost-efficient price. So if you're looking for someone that's going to like take the CB1 job, I don't think Douglas is that guy. But if you're looking for someone to complement Deonte Banks and be a CB2, I do think that he can fill that role. In that instance, how do you feel about that? Do you see Douglas as more of like, he's your complement to Banks, or do you think he could press him?
I think Douglas is I don't think he steps in and he's necessarily your CB1, you're done upgrading at the position, not by any stretch of an imagination. To me, Alex, I viewed a potential Rasul Douglas signing as a Dory Jackson, but better. I think that he's a better player right now than Dory Jackson is in their respective points of their career. Again, I know that Douglas didn't play well this past season. However, if you're looking at the past 3 years' body of work with him and Dory Jackson, I think you can make an argument that Douglas is the more consistent player. So I think the way that the Giants, Alex, at the end of last offseason, right before the season started, they scrambled and they're like, you know what? We didn't get a veteran in this room. We need one. Let's go bring back Adoree Jackson. They did that. Adoree Jackson clearly past his prime and not able to perform the way that the New York Giants wanted him to. This could be a similar signing in concept, but better in practice because he is a better player who can do the same things as Adoree Jackson. The Giants didn't sign Adoree Jackson to be their CB1 and lock down CeeDee Lamb twice a season, right? They signed him just because, you know what? They needed some upgrades. They needed a veteran presence. Let's just get the best option in there. Douglas could be similar, not necessarily a CB1. Doesn't prevent you from signing a Travarius Ward as well or a DJ Reed as well if you wanted to go ahead and sign the top of the market. Douglas can just be your second level guy who contributes similarly to how Adoree Jackson did, but hopefully at a higher level of performance. So that's what I think about Rasul Douglas. Again, that's why I think he makes sense for the Giants. I don't think he's, again, going to fix your problems in the secondary and be your CB1. But in terms of just adding some experience to the room and some consistency and some reliability, I think he checks all of those boxes. So that's who I like there. But Alex, I know you had a third guy. I don't even remember who your third guy was, so this is going to be a surprise to me. I get to live react to this one because I don't remember who your third underrated free agent was. Let me hear it.
So keep in mind, we're just talking about these three players. They're not players that we altogether believe the Giants will sign. We like them as cost-efficient, like mid-tier free agent signings. Now, we hope they get better talent, but we also acknowledge that not everyone can be Trey Smith. Not everyone can be T. Higgins, and the Giants don't have that type of money right now anyway. They want to be conservative and then kind of have that big chunk next year to reinforce a rookie quarterback in a really good kind of upswing. They're trying to time it out. That's how I feel. They're going to time it out. The last player I have on the docket, though, is Mike Williams. And Anthony, Mike Williams is interesting because he's 30 years old. He's 1 year removed from an ACL tear, and I like that, because he's not coming off the ACL tear. The year after that situation is always the worst for a veteran player. He signed a 1 year, $10 million deal with the Jets and then ended up being moved to the Steelers about midway through the year. So interestingly, he had some decent games at the end of the season. He had 169 yards with the Steelers, 166 yards with the Jets. Now, he wasn't a big proponent, but he did have a much better success rate in terms of 66.7% reception rate with Pittsburgh and only 57.1% with the Jets. So I do think that there is a little bit of gas left in the tank here. He's 6'4", 218 pounds. He's a physical go-getter, contested catch type of guy. He's a competitor. He's a former first-round pick. He's a year removed from the injury. This is the type of guy I'm taking a stab at in free agency. You might be able to get him on like a 1 million, 1 year, $6 million deal. Maybe he gets a little bit more than that because he does have that little bit more upside than the average, kind of veteran receiver that's coming off an injury like that. Because of his size, he only is 2 years removed from being like really freaking good. I'd say 2 years removed. In 2022, he had 895 yards and 4 touchdowns. The year before that, 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. So I think this is a player that I'd take a stab at. I mean, best case scenario, he's your WR2. Worst case scenario, he's your WR3. You know what I mean? Like, that's as long as he stays healthy. I still think the Giants should add another receiver in this draft class, whether it be in the third round or even if they go for a guy like Trey Harris in the second round. So, there is some talent to be had. And, you guys know I love Igbuka, but I think he's going to be a first-round pick. So there is a lot of things they can do here. But Mike Williams is interesting. On a 1 year, $6 million deal, I'd be intrigued by him. I think I would go out and get him because the upside there is certainly worthwhile exploring.
I think so. The only part that I differ with you on is you said that at best he can be your WR2. I think at best he really is your WR3. I
That's
think
fair.
that at this
That's
point
fair.
in his career, I think Wan'Dale Robinson is a better player. So at the very least, Wan'Dale is going to be your second receiver in this offense. But we know that that's not going to be the case for the New York Giants. They want to add to this offense. They want to bring in a significant weapon, is the report. And I have no doubts that they're really going to try and do that. Joe Shane has made a blockbuster trade in 2 consecutive off seasons. I imagine he's going to do one again this upcoming offseason. He's going to bring in some sort of seasoned veteran playmaker, like a legitimate star potentially, to go in there and score touchdowns for the Giants because they really struggled to do that last year. However, depth is key. The best teams in the NFL have solid depth. And Mike Williams, like you said, at this point in his career, I still think there is some gas left in that tank. He made some really impressive catches on those back shoulder fades. That's his money ball. What he does better than almost anybody when he was at his prime in the NFL was catching those back shoulder fades. I'm absolutely down to bring in Mike Williams, see if he could catch some back shoulder fades from whichever rookie quarterback is throwing them, and just be a little bit of a spark plug, big play generator in spurts. He's not going to be on the field for you every down. He's not going to have the same level of production that you expect from a legitimate WR2. But as a WR3, as a guy who comes in every now and then and makes a big play, if we don't trust Jalen Hyatt to do that, Mike Williams is the guy who at one point did that better than anybody else and still in spurts does it at a high level. So I also do like the Mike Williams signing idea. I think he does make sense. Again, he doesn't solve all your problems. He doesn't increase your touchdown total necessarily, maybe by a couple of scores, but just in terms of having a veteran presence, I think that's been a big theme in this episode. When you're looking at these these second tier free agents, you want some experience on those guys, some guys who are lending more than just what they bring to the football field. Mike Williams has always been a good leader as well. The Jets they didn't know how to use them. They don't know how to use anybody. They're an absolute shit show, especially when they had Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator. Aaron Rodgers made them a circus. I'm going to die on that hill. I think that was a terrible idea to bring him in. And if Giants fans want Aaron Rodgers, we are going to fight about it because the Giants should steer absolutely clear from Mr. Aaron Rodgers, especially if they want to bring in free agent wide receivers who want to be part of an offense and not part of a conglomerate of Aaron Rodgers bullshit. So I think Mike Williams just got caught up in all of that mess. He looked a lot better when he was with the Steelers, with Russell Wilson throwing him the ball. And Alex, I'll even make this connection. You tweeted it out today. The number 1 free agent quarterback that you think the Giants should target as a bridge? Russell Wilson. Maybe you bring in Russell Wilson, you bring in Mike Williams as well, you keep that connection going because it looked pretty solid at times during the final stretch of this offseason. What are your thoughts on that too, Alex, just before we wrap this thing? I know that's a little bit off topic, but I want to get your take because you put it on Twitter today. Russell Wilson being your favorite bridge option for the Giants potentially. What do you think about maybe you bring in Russell Wilson, you bring in Mike Williams, and then you get a young receiver through the draft and a young quarterback through the draft as well. So there you go. You're going with bridges at both of those positions and young players ascending into larger roles.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question to people in the comments that don't like Russell Wilson. Could you name who his offensive coordinator was this year? I'll wait. Arthur freaking Smith. If you have anything bad to say about Russell Wilson this year, it's because of Arthur freaking Smith. He is the worst offensive coordinator. The dude is so boring and so freaking horrible. And by the way, Anthony, Russell Wilson had 18 touchdown passes in less than a full season, which would be the most the Giants have had since 2019, which is Daniel Jones' rookie season. So anyone saying that Russell Wilson wouldn't be a massive upgrade on this team is out of their mind. And the reason I like Russell Wilson in free agency is because you could do a one-and-done year. You don't have to go get Matthew Stafford and live in purgatory. You don't have to go get Derek Carr and live in purgatory. You can just get Russell Wilson, have him be a bridge, pay him for one season, move on without any financial implications. Why on earth would you not accept that? Why on earth would you go get almost 38-year-old Matthew Stafford who wants a contract extension, who definitely doesn't want to end his career with the New York Giants, who are years away from being even close to competent? Matthew Stafford is not coming to the Giants, guys. Like, get it out of your head. Derek Carr is even more realistic than that, and I think his money doesn't make any sense. Go get a one-year bridge, pay a decent player like Russell Wilson, who is still competent. He can lead. He can give you a good mentor for a young player to watch and learn from, and then you move the hell on with no money in the future that's accounted for. $30 million cap hits, $25 million cap hits. In a Derek Carr's case, $60 million cap hits in the second year. Let's not do that. Let's not screw ourselves in 2 years. Let's open up $120 million in cap space with rookie contracts and go and get the best freaking receivers and best freaking players to fill the needs that we have. That's how you build. The Bears? Do you see the Bears trading for Matthew Stafford before getting Caleb Williams? Do you see the Commanders going out and trading for Matthew Stafford before getting Jaden Daniels? Do you see the freaking Denver Broncos going out and trading for a big... in fact, they got rid of their big contract before they got Bo Nix of all players. How about the Falcons? They're trying to get rid of Kirk Cousins, not to consume a big contract. The good teams, the teams that are going in the direction of getting young quarterbacks, are not adding a big contract and then extending 38-year-old quarterbacks. That's not how you build a team. That's not how you build sustainable success. You go and you sign Russell Wilson for one freaking year and you move on. And then you inherit that $120 million and you usher that young rookie quarterback on a rookie contract into a golden era. That's what you freaking do.
There is one team, though, that did it the other way, the way that you're saying not to do it. Do you know what team that was? The piece of shit New York Jets, and that's why everything blew up in their face.
I was like, the Jets popped into my mind, but I was trying to think about who their quarterback was. It was Zach Wilson, obviously. Yeah,
they brought in Aaron Rodgers. They were like, oh, we'll try and fix Zach Wilson with Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't work. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, if you're going to get the bridge, get it to be the one and done. I know I advocated for Derek Carr yesterday, and I still think that there is a way to make that happen. If you have an out after that first year, then it maybe makes sense. But you really have to be careful about adding future money onto your books because, man, cap space, it gets tight real fast. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs, Alex. I don't know if you saw this. 5% of their salary cap, 60% of their salary cap space going into 2025 is made up of 5 players. And one of them is Travis Kelce, and he's completely washed, in my opinion. So they're actually probably running into some trouble. They might have that Super Bowl hangover, after that loss where you start to feel really shitty, and then you don't play too well the next season. We might actually finally be seeing the death of that dynasty. Meanwhile, we got to worry about 2 juggernauts in the NFC East who are rising to make their own dynasties. But I'll digress off that. I do agree with you. I think it's very interesting ideas here for some of these second-rate free agents that the New York Giants could target. I think my favorite that we mentioned, though, was Patrick Mekari. But on the off topic that we mentioned, I do really like Russell Wilson. I think he makes a lot of sense for the Giants. I know that he is reportedly interested in the Giants and has them circled, has them on his list. I could totally see Russell Wilson wanting to be in New York, and I could see New York wanting him. I know that rumor has honestly been around forever because of Ciara, obviously Russell Wilson's wife. She's always wanted him to be in the New York market. I remember these rumors from like 7 years ago being a thing when Eli Manning was on his way out. And it just never came to fruition. Perhaps it does now. We'll see. Of course, it's going to be a really fun offseason. And free agency is only a couple weeks away, really. Once you get to the combine, that's when free agency kind of starts to begin because all of the illegal tampering prior to the legal tampering period starts at the combine. So it's going to be fun, guys. I'm excited to keep diving into all these different free agents, at all these different price tiers as well. So make sure that you leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss the episode, and comment your thoughts down below. And if you're listening to Apple or Spotify, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Go and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.